Good morning, everyone. Well, actually, good afternoon, depending where you are. So thank you all for joining us today. We're going to give folks just another few seconds here, try to get as many folks to join. And then in just a minute, I will go over the logistics and we'll get started here. We'll just give folks just another 30 seconds or so. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and get started. Thank you again, everyone, for joining us today. My name is Natalie Roberts from Scrum Training Institute, and I'll be moderating today's webinar with Arnie Olander, who's going to be facilitating the creating and using a product owner playbook, which we're so excited for this webinar. We've had this webinar one other time and it was phenomenal. So he's back to do another one for us. Before I turn it over to him, I did want to just go over a couple logistical items. This webinar is being recorded, so we will send out a recording to everyone in attendance and everyone who did register for the webinar. Also, if you would please be okay with staying on mute for the presentation, that would be great. And if you do have questions throughout the presentation, we're going to allow time for questions at the end. So if you want to just add your question in the chat window, that would be fine. And I'll be happy to compile those questions and we'll get to them at the end of the presentation. Okay, I think that's all I have. I'm going to turn it over to Arnie and we'll get started. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Natalie, for that presentation, and congratulations on pronunciation of Swedish last names. So, my name is Arne Olander, and I'm happy to be here presenting on creating and using a product owner playbook. And I'm going to share my screen, and I'm going to start playing the presentation. So this is done by me, Arne Olander, and it's organized by Scrum Training Institute. So the founder of Scrum Training Institute, Jens Östergaard, and we go a long way together. So back. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to get right to it. So what you see sometimes is that you have an empty desk in front of you. And I'm pretty sure that if you want to start as a product owner, this is not exactly what you want. But in many situations, that's what you get. You're asked to become a product owner, you accept the offer, and then you're more or less left without any support at all. So in this presentation, what I aim to do is to give ideas on some principles to follow and some tools to use in order to become a successful product owner. I see that sometimes it feels like you're entering a labyrinth or a maze, and navigating in that maze is not always easy. So this is what I hope to do, to give some guidance, ideas, and inspiration to navigate through what I call the product owner labyrinth. So I want to return to the empty desk, and I want to think about what I would have liked to have on my desk when I became not a product owner, but a product manager, because that's my background within traditional product management. And what I would have liked is some sort of playbook. And the inspiration for a playbook come from sports. And it could look something like this: a product owner playbook that would contain principles, practices to follow as a product owner, could also contain a collection of tools and templates, and maybe a list of things, of trainings that you need to become the best possible product owner. So to me, this is something that I would like every new product owner to inherit, enhance, and then give as a gift to the person following them. So what I'm looking at or looking for is like a kind of a document to summarize the most important aspects of being a product owner, and the most important aspects of the product, and also a high-level overview for the things necessary to know for a product owner to be successful. In a product owner playbook, of course, you have possible content, and things that I would like to see is, for example, a list of important stakeholders, because as a product owner in Scrum, you're supposed to represent stakeholders. So it's good to know who they are. It's good to note down your vision for the product, the high-level description of what you want to build, for whom to offer it, and why it's beneficial to build it. Some sort of product roadmap and information about the releases that people can expect would be excellent as well to be in a product owner playbook. The product backlog, or some links to where to find information on the product backlog. Product backlog should be updated and kept updated and ready for next sprint planning. So what does it mean to keep the product backlog ready for sprint planning? What is our definition of ready? That's something that I think fits in a product owner playbook. Also, definition of done, because towards the end of each iteration of each sprint, we want to hear from the development team that now we're done. Now we have created a working, potentially shippable product increment. And what does that mean? What is the gap between a perfect definition of done, where we can release just with like a snap of our fingers, and the actual situation where we may have been forced to save certain things until after the sprint? What is the gap between a perfect definition of done and our actual capabilities of doing stuff in the sprint? So that could be possible content. And there could be other things as well. I'll talk about lots of things here, these things and others as well. And as I said, my aim is to give you guidance, ideas, and inspiration to create something similar. So let's start with stakeholders. To have a list of stakeholders, to map your stakeholders, is a really good idea if you ask me. Also to understand for yourself and to tell others about how important are the stakeholders, because as a product owner, as I said before, we are representing stakeholders, and it's really good to understand their needs and their wants so that we can, as product owners, optimize on a global product level, because I may not be able to satisfy every single stakeholder. I may need to divide them into key stakeholders, maybe direct stakeholders and indirect stakeholders. So what types of stakeholders do we have? Well, you may ask yourself, do we have internal or external stakeholders, or both? Probably we have both. In some companies, when I'm a product owner for a product that supports the business operations of my own company, then I probably only have internal stakeholders. But in most other cases, I have both internal and external. Then you can talk about primary or secondary. You can talk about direct or indirect. And a direct stakeholder is a stakeholder who is really interested in the product, probably using the product or the service that we are building. And an indirect stakeholder is someone who is affected by the use of the product. That can be good to have as well. This is one way of mapping stakeholders and visualize what you know for yourself, and to have this as a conversation piece with others. You can do it in other ways as well. So you can, of course, divide your stakeholders based upon how much power they have and how much interest they have in your product. So you can do this gradually. You can divide it into 4 fields like I suggest in this image, or you can do even more. You can do 3 by 3 or 4 by 4. I try to not make it too complicated. So I rather start out easy. And then when I take a look at these X, Y, Z, and Q, I ask myself, in what order should I address these, and who should I talk most to? So should I talk more to involve the Y stakeholders more, the Z stakeholders more, X or Q? So based upon your knowledge of how interested stakeholders are and how much power they have, I suggest that you decide, okay, what is a good order? In what order should we address them? Which is more important? And I suggest that in the chat box, you write down for yourself the idea of which of these letters, the type of stakeholders would you be more interested in working together with than the others, and which would you be least interested in working with? If now I'm going to check one thing. I'm going to see if I can do something about the chat box. There is something stopping me from seeing the chat box right now. So I'll just continue, and we'll take a look at it later. Now you know what you've written, and you probably see what is written in the chat box as well. So I would do the following. I would start with those of high interest and high power. I will try to collaborate with those kind of stakeholders. And then I would actually, number 2 here is those with high interest, not necessarily high power. I would involve them because if they have an interest in the product, they're more likely, according to me, to give good input to product development. Then number 3 would be those with high power and low interest. And number 4, if I work with them, of course, I inform them. Sometimes this is more for internal stakeholders, and you may benefit from the circle perspective if you have external stakeholders. This is quite a common grid, the power interest grid, to use also for project stakeholders, which are usually internal. So knowing your stakeholders, knowing who you should spend more time with, together with, and knowing who you should consult and inform is a good thing for a product owner. So stakeholders are important, and for stakeholders, it's also good for them to know what is the product vision. And the product vision we'll talk about, and the order, if you wrote down the letters before, I propose the order Y, Q, Z, and X. And then product vision. A product vision in Scrum is a high-level description of what we're building, for whom we're building it, and why we're building the product. A product vision should give us some direction and focus. It should guide the development team or development teams. It should help the team to focus on building this important product, and it should align stakeholders. So I believe it should cover who, what, and why. And using a product vision is quite valuable if you ask me. And to me, a good product vision should be shared. Everyone involved should buy into it, because then we are more likely to get what we want. A good product vision, in order to guide a development team and help them stay focused, should be stable. It should probably be clear, because if it's not clear, it's vague, and that will not help very many people. I believe it should be broad and engaging, so it gives room for good surprises by the development team when they build a product. And it shouldn't be too elaborate, concise. There are different ways of creating a product vision. What you see here are pictures from my product owner classes that I have been delivering all through the world. And one of the techniques that we usually use in those classes, and that you can use in real life as well, is something called product vision box or product box. And this comes from a book by Luke Homan called Innovation Games. At the bottom of the screen, you also see the URL where you can read more about this exercise or game. And a product box is a box that we make an assumption that we can put the product into a box, and then we try to illustrate the front and the back of the box so that someone who sees it would know what kind of product it is, and would be interested in buying this particular product. So it should not only tell what type of product it is and what kind of features it has, it should also make people really interested in buying or using this particular product. Product box is one technique to start thinking and discussing about a product vision. You can also use templates for an elevator pitch. An elevator pitch is a short statement that you can use when you meet important people, investors, for example, or maybe the CEO of your most wanted customer. And a common template used for those things comes from a book by Jeffrey Moore called Crossing the Chasm. And here we try to identify the target customer, what statement of need or opportunity they have, what is the name of the product and the category, and then we try to talk about key benefit or compelling reason to buy or use. And we also make sure that we talk a little about how this is different from primary competitive alternative. And we also identify the primary differentiation, what is unique with our product. And it may look like this. This is actually from one of the classes I ran. So this is not a real product, but here is a pitch, an elevator pitch for one possible product or service. So for bike riders who want to buy a custom bike, this product, yourbikey.com, is a marketplace that let constructors provide custom bikes for sale. And unlike a traditional bike store where standard bikes are sold, our solutions support purchase of individually and custom designed bikes. So here you see how you can use this template and actually create something that you can use as an elevator pitch. So I've been talking about product vision, and if there is something that I believe every product owner needs, it's a great product vision, or at least a product vision giving the shorthand of what we are looking at, what kind of product we are looking at. There are things that successful product owners are able to do. And successful product owners, they are able to visualize things for themselves and others. And what I'm thinking about, and I know that I'm a little vague on this, is to visualize the things that are easily hidden if not focused on. And what we see a lot of times is that there are things under the surface that we need to visualize and make more obvious. So this could be practices. Some of the practices used by a product owner, they are evident because I may do customer interviews and other stuff as well to understand the needs of potential customers. And then there are a lot of things that may be underneath the surface. So that's what I mean by visualization. Whatever I do as a product owner, it's good to visualize for myself or for others, and for others, I should say, not or, but and. And areas of visualization. Well, as a product owner, I usually work in all of these areas. I probably start out by trying to discover what is the right product to build and visualize for myself and others what I and we discover. Then when we have enough information, it's time to start to plan and execute building the product. And that's something that I want to visualize for myself and others as well. And then, of course, at certain points, I want to deliver as well. So making release plans and roadmaps and stuff like that to visualize this. And the thing about Scrum is that Scrum is an agile framework. Working as a product owner means that I need to do things iteratively. I may not spend a lot of times initially to discover and then spend a lot of time on planning and executing and then delivering everything at the end. Instead, we need to repeat these things. So discovery of what is the best possible product to build may never come to an end. So the iterative part of Scrum is important to remember. So we want to visualize things. And some of the tools and some of the practices that I'm talking about here today are to help us visualize things. For example, product discovery. And product discovery is about discovering why something should be built, for whom we are building it, and what we are building. So it's to some extent our ability to look into the future. And when I talk about product discovery, I have received inspiration from a book by Marty Kagan. And the book by Marty Kagan and the other references that I mentioned, you will see in the presentation when that's available. And towards the end of this presentation, I also have a long list of references. So one reference is the book Inspired by Marty Kagan. And let me just go back here. Marty Kagan, he writes about things, and his recommendation is that as a product owner, you should focus on misery, not on technology. So he writes about that. What are the things that make life miserable to people? What, not focus on technology that that will be possible. Also, he recommends to work with your developers early and work more with prototypes than product requirements documents, and lead by objective, not necessarily by instruction. So what is the goal? What is the objective? What is the vision of the product? That's what you should lead by. And as a product owner, it's in my interest to build a team with a core of passion, integrity, and empathy. So involve the development team early to help out with product discovery. There are different things that I will talk about when we talk about product discovery. I'll talk about value proposition canvas, business model canvas, and lean canvas, and a couple of other things as well. And I will not talk as much about product scorecard or product vision board. Those are ways to visualize as well that may work for some product owners. So I mentioned them, and the two last here, product scorecard and product vision board, they are described by Roman Pichler, and I have some references to books by Roman Pichler as well. So what I will start talking about is something called value proposition canvas. And a value proposition canvas is a tool described in a very good book by Alex Osterwalder and others called Value Proposition Design. Value proposition canvas is about visualizing two basic things. To the right, we talk about the customer segment that you want to create value for. To the left, the value proposition that you believe will make your customers wanting to buy your product or use your service. And what we see in the middle is two arrows meeting. So we want to get the fit here between what we can offer and what customers want. So a value proposition canvas starts with observation. We try to understand what are the jobs that the customer wants to get done. So we want to describe an important issue that our customers or users are trying to solve. And that could be tasks, it could be problems, it could be needs. And the thing about this is that what we describe, some of them are really crucial and others are more trivial. So we want to cover them all. And then when we create our value proposition, of course, we want to address the most crucial parts. We also want to identify pains that our customers or users may be feeling right now without our great product. And pains can be things like cost, emotions, risks. And of course, we also want to identify gains that they may be looking for. And that's like outcomes, value, benefits, desire to have. When we observe all of these things, we talk about customer jobs. And the most common thing to talk about is functional jobs. Like if we take a look at the watch, the functional job of a watch is to tell time, maybe tell date as well. But we don't only want to focus on functional jobs. We also want to focus on social jobs. And social job is what kind of things I'm communicating or signaling when I wear a certain watch. It could be anything from a very modest watch to a very technology savvy watch to a very expensive watch with a lot of bling. So social job. There is a reason why we joke about older men buying sports cars, and that is that sport car usually is doing a great social job for those older men. And then not only functional jobs and social jobs, also emotional jobs. And that is about the feelings. Some people, they get better feelings about the product based upon how ethical the company is and how the company go about doing certain things. So we hear today a lot about corporate social responsibility, CSR, and that's a way to kind of satisfy emotional jobs for potential customers. So all of that, what I've been talking about now in the red circle, that's about observation. And based upon our observations, we can, part of this could be actually using an empathy map. And an empathy map, you see pain and gain, but you also think about the user. What would the user think and feel when using our product? What would the user see? What would the user hear from others when using our products? And what would the user say and do when using our product? You can dig even deeper into this and start creating personas to really try to understand the needs and emotions and wants from our potential customers and users. And based upon all of this, now it's time to start designing something. So the left part of this canvas is, of course, the product and services that we put together to satisfy the needs of the customers, to meet the customer jobs, some crucial and some trivial. And then we also try to identify pain relievers, at least for the most crucial pains, and some gain creators to meet the most wanted gains as well. And what we want here are two types of fits. We want a problem solution fit so that we have a solution that fits the problem that potential customers are having. And of course, we are dreaming of a great product market fit. And a great product market fit is when your product gets traction in the marketplace. And the really dream scenario of that would be people lining up and more or less trying to pull the products out of our hands. So this was talking about value proposition canvas. Value proposition canvas is a good starting point for putting together a business model canvas. And you see the color combination here. So at the bottom of the image here, you see 9 building blocks out that makes up a good business model. I believe it's good for product owners to be involved in analyzing and designing business models. Not all product owners are, but it's good to know a little about it. So if you want to know even more about business models and business model design, you should read the book Business Model Generation by Alex Osterwalder and others. So same brains behind value proposition canvas and business model canvas. And here you see the different building blocks. A possible order of addressing this: customer segment, value proposition, talking about the different channels, marketing channels, sales channels, delivery channels, post-sales channels, etc. What kind of relationships we want with our customers, and what are the revenue streams. And then internally, think about key resources in terms of material, key activities, if we need any key partners, and then also the cost structure. If you look upon business models from this perspective, you can analyze existing ones and you can improve them, and you can probably compete even better. If Alex Osterwalder is right, the competition in the future, and maybe already today, is about who can come up with the best business model, not necessarily who can come up with the best product or value proposition. I'm going to talk a little about a customized version of business model canvas. This is called a lean canvas, and Ash Moria, who created this, he used the business model canvas extensively, and he thought for his startups that there were certain fields here that he more or less wrote the same thing every time. So he didn't really learn anything. So he took away key partners, and instead he wanted to describe the problem that we want to solve by building this product. He took away key activities, and instead he wanted to describe the key elements of the solution. And he took away key resources, and instead he added key metrics so that we know if we're moving in the right direction or not. And then he took away the field or the cell for customer relationships, not because that's not important, but because he came up with something which he found even more important. And he talks instead about something which he calls unfair advantage. An unfair advantage is something that a competitor may feel, and we want the competitors to feel that we, when we offer our product, have an unfair advantage. We can offer something which is unique and very, very hard to copy. And if it's not hard to copy, it's very expensive to copy or take a long time to copy. If we have that, if we can gain that unfair advantage from the eyes of our competitors, we are very well aware of that. So there are different companies, and I would like to give you an example of one company that others may find that they have an unfair advantage. And you may like or you may dislike this company. It's quite controversial, but I'll tell you about it anyway. So the company I'm thinking about is Facebook. So if we decided that we wanted to compete with Facebook, we would probably think that they have a large unfair advantage. They have a much larger user base than we have. So that could be one example of an unfair advantage. Other could be proprietary technology that is hard to copy or takes time or is very expensive to copy. So this was a little talk about Lean Canvas, a customized version of business model canvas. It looks a little like this if you do it. And what I want to do as a product owner, I want to get early feedback. And this is getting back to what I talked about before, about never settle down. So we should keep on discovering, we should keep on inspecting and adaptation. Inspection, adaptation, transparency, that's also part of working with products. And of course, you need to make decisions. And then you need to inspect your decisions and adapt them. You may do some hypothesis, you may do some testing. And a very good book by Alex Osterwalder and David J. Bland, a quite new book called Testing Business Ideas, contains a lot of good ideas for product owners to do all of this early on and continuously. Lean startup is another way that you can use these things, working in an iterative way. And from Lean startup, you may have heard about minimum viable product. So you have an idea, you build a product, you present it to customers or users, you measure how they respond, and then you learn. You pivot or you persevere. You keep on building upon your idea so that you continuously add new features to your product or new learning to what you're doing. So here you see another way of illustrating this. An idea is designed to a product, you measure, you get data, you learn, and you tweak your idea until you create a product that is really loved by many people. When you understand what you want to build, you may start to do some product planning. And then you may think about what this is. And this, probably all of you know that it's an onion, but it's not any type of onion. This is actually what I call a planning onion. And in more detail, it looks like this. As a product owner, I will be involved in different planning levels. If we work according to sprint, I probably give input for sprint planning by providing a product backlog. And then the teams building the product, they do the daily planning. And I will be involved in release planning, maybe product planning and portfolio planning. And the company I'm working for will probably have a strategy process with strategic planning as well. And the ideas behind these circles is that the outer circles, they support the inner circles. So the strategy we have supports our portfolio plan, our product plans, our release plans, our sprint plans, and our daily plans. Maybe not directly, but indirectly through the other layers of this planning onion. And the product backlog is an important artifact for the product owner. So you should keep information about that in your product owner playbook. It's really good to have some idea of long-term plans with some sort of product roadmap containing timelines, releases, features, technology, and also alternatives that we see right now. And we may not have come to the point of time when it's necessary to make a decision between two different alternatives. As a product owner, I want to get the details of the product backlog just in time. I don't want to get all the details up front because I may learn things before it's necessary to get to some details. So get to the details just in time for sprint planning, and then it's good to be agree with the development team. What does it mean to be in a ready state for the product backlog? So when is the product backlog ready for sprint planning? How small parts should we break the product backlog into to make it possible for the development team to plan for the next sprint? And what type of information should it contain? There are a lot of different answers to this. So thinking in terms of having a ready state and being agreeing upon a definition of ready may be a good idea for product owners and development teams. And when you see my list of references later on, you will see one book listed called A Scrum Book, The Spirit of the Game. That book is written by Jeff Sutherland, James Copeland, and others. And it contains a list of, I believe it's 94 patterns for good implementation of Scrum. And definition of ready is mentioned there. Definition of done is mentioned there. Because when we build our products towards the end of each sprint or iteration, we want to hear from the development team, now we're done. And we want an agreement between the product owner and the development team. What does this mean? Jeff Sutherland talks about the done state towards the end of the sprint. And as a product owner, you may be involved in release planning, and input for release planning is a product backlog, some knowledge about the productivity of the development team or development teams involved, and then creating a tentative release plan, helping me as a product owner to tell stakeholders what they can expect and when. And the trick here is to not be too detailed, because if I'm too detailed, there is one thing I can be sure of. I'm not going to meet all of the expectations, but we want stakeholders to understand some detail at least. So release planning, and when you put together releases, The different type of functionality that you want can be categorized like we do in Kano analysis. We talk about functionality that a certain type of product must have. So think about the product that you have and think about the functionality that you wouldn't buy the product without it having. And then Kano analysis also talks about linear functionality. The more I get at the same price, the better. So linear functionality. And then also, and this is the big challenge, identify possible delighters. The type of functionality that a user or a customer didn't expect, but now couldn't even dream of, but now when they have it, they don't want to be without it. So I used to work in the mobile phone industry. So I usually use mobile phones as my example. So think about mobile phone. What functionality do you absolutely need? You wouldn't buy a mobile phone without that functionality. Then you have your must-haves. And then linear functionality. The more I get to the same price, the better. And delighters. So for a mobile phone, when I ask people, they say, well, be able to make a call, be able to receive a call. My kids, they say games and chat functions, messaging. Linear functionality could be performance, could be the number of pixels for the camera, could be battery performance and size of memory. And delighters, well, it's hard to come up with delighters, but if we think about mobile phones that we have had over the years, there are certainly some examples of delighters. And one of the interesting things is that something that I believe to be a delighter before may be a must-have today. So color screen, for example. Having a camera in my mobile phone is also something that I thought was a delighter when I first got it. But now I wouldn't buy a mobile phone without a color screen or without a camera either. So this is one type of analysis you can do. I mentioned a lot of things, and I'm gonna do a quick conclusion and summary and then leave room for some questions from all you participants. So sometimes it may feel like some sort of a labyrinth when you work as a product owner. And we have talked about vision, discovery, release planning, playbook, definition of ready, and things like that. And putting all this together, you can use your playbook to make it more easy for you to think about and more easy for you to leave this to someone else who may be succeeding you as a product owner. And also, while you are still the product owner, to help you improve as a product owner. At the bottom, there are a couple of black and white things that I haven't talked very much about. This is a model for how companies, they develop from a book called Predictable Success. And I won't get into detail about that, but that may be helpful to learn a little about that as well. So the principles that I've covered, I've talked about product discovery. I've talked about definition of ready. I've talked about definition of done. And I also talked about ready state and done state. And I've talked about the idea that we always need to iterate, inspect and adapt all our decisions, and be open to improving your product even late during development. A couple of tools that we have discussed, product owner playbook being the main tool where you can put all of the others into. Talking about product vision, definitely. Talking about stakeholder maps, and value proposition canvas. Also, we talked about empathy map, and I mentioned personas. We talked about business model canvas and lean canvas, and I mentioned lean startup and minimum viable product as well. So that's a quick summary of what I have been talking about. And we have time for some questions if you have those. So I'll be quiet and I'll stop sharing my screen because for some reason I'm not able to see the chat when I share my screen. So there is one question: will we get these slides later on? So Natalie, you will probably be able to answer that.
Yep, and everyone will get a recording of the presentation. Yep. I think there was one other question out there. Do you have any filled in examples of each of the canvases?
I do not have, but I know where you can find a lot of more information about the canvases that I mentioned, especially the business model canvas and the value proposition canvas. And the company that, let me just I think this is the name of the company that I'm writing here in the chat. Strategizer, that's the company that Alex Osterwalder created. And if you go to strategizer.com, you will be able to find much more details and much more information about both those canvases and other things as well that are related.
Awesome. Any other questions that anybody has? Okay, well, while you guys are thinking of some questions, I am going to launch a short poll for the participants, just a brief retrospective on how you felt about the webinar, just so we get a little bit of feedback. So I'll go ahead and launch that right now.
And of course, I didn't send it to everyone, the link to the company, but here it is. Strategizer.com, strategizer with a Y. Sorry for miswriting it before.
Awesome. Okay, we'll give folks just a couple more minutes to put in their feedback. And again, any other questions? I'd like to thank Arnie for taking the time with us today. It was a wonderful presentation. Thank you.
Well, thank you, and thanks for listening. And I know that Scrum Training Institute offers more free webinars like this. So I recommend taking a look at the website and see if you have other things that may be of interest that they offer.
Thank you, Arnie. And yes, we do have some additional webinars scheduled, and we're always looking to put more on the calendar. So there's a couple out there now, and we'll be adding some more in the near future. So if that is it, I think we are set. Any closing comments?
If I can do one more thing, I just want to share my screen on one more thing, because I mentioned that I would show some references. And first of all, here you have my contact details if you want to contact me, my mail address and my Twitter handle, and the website of my company. And here are a list of things that I have mentioned, references. So these will be in the recording as well. I wanted to have them here as well. So I'll just leave this for now for those of you who want to make a note or maybe take a screenshot of this to keep for your references.
Awesome. Thank you for adding that. Okay. And again, if any last minute questions, doesn't look like it. Oh, just a thank you. Thank you, Raj. Okay, well, good. Well, thanks again for taking time to spend with us this afternoon or morning, wherever you guys are.